Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something really quite paradoxical, right at the heart of the American dream, you could say. Just think for a second about California, the Golden State. What comes to mind? Probably images of, endless sunshine, beaches, maybe the glitz of Hollywood Boulevard, that famous sign up in the hills. And it's this place that feels synonymous with innovation, with dreams coming true, and, well, just immense wealth. Almost unbelievable wealth, really. That's the California we all sort of picture, right? A beacon of prosperity. But see, this deep dive forces us and you to look at a really jarring contradiction, a visceral one. Because right there, in the core of all that prosperity, in the heart of one of the world's most powerful economies, there's this stark, honestly shocking reality, a crisis of extreme poverty and homelessness that's it's hard to get your head around the scale of it. And our focus today, the epicenter of this contradiction, is Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles. We're talking an area, maybe 50 city blocks, where over 6,000 people are unhoused, living on the streets, in tents, sometimes just on the ground.
This is profound human crisis happening every day, literally blocks away from global affluence. And it just makes you ask, how? How can this even be?
That question, how can this be? Well, that's exactly why this deep dive feels so necessary. To really get the scale we're talking about, just consider this. California, the state, has the fourth largest economy in the entire world. I mean, by 2024, its GDP alone is set to be bigger than Japan's. Just let that sink in for a moment. An economy bigger than most countries. Yet, it's grappling with this incredibly pervasive, visible homelessness. It's just a profound contradiction, isn't it? It really demands that we look much, much deeper than the surface, challenge those comfortable ideas we have about progress and wealth. So our mission today really is to unpack this complex paradox for you. We're going to dig into the main causes behind the crisis. We'll explore, how these huge economic disparities and, frankly, systemic failures contribute. We'll also look at the really intricate and sometimes, let's be honest, controversial role that government policies and nonprofit organizations play. Are they helping? Or are they, as some sources suggest, maybe part of the complication? And crucially, we want to connect all these big picture issues to the deeply personal stories, the individual experiences, including the really tough mental health challenges and that profound sense of disconnection that seems so tangled up with it all. Our aim isn't just to observe. We want to help you understand not just what's happening, but why. Connect the dots, give you a really well-informed, nuanced view on this huge societal issue. And maybe, just maybe, a new way to think about human connection itself is the stark contradiction. Wealth and despair in California.
Okay, so let's dig into that a bit more. We started with that image, right? California, Hollywood Boulevard, the sign, symbols of aspiration, success. It's powerful imagery, almost mythic. The American dream kind of distilled. But then our research points to this almost invisible line in Los Angeles. Geographically there, but socially, chorus maybe. The second you cross it, though, everything just flips instantly. The glitz, the promise, it just evaporates. And you're faced with this devastating reality. We are talking about Skid Row itself. And it's important to stress this isn't just like one bad block or single street. No, this is a whole neighborhood, a defined community spanning roughly 50 city blocks, almost a square mile right in downtown LA. And it is, by pretty much any standard, considered one of America's poorest areas and certainly one of the most concentrated areas of homelessness. The sheer scale of visible poverty right there inside such an incredibly wealthy city and state, it's genuinely astounding. It really forces you to confront that uncomfortable truth, doesn't it? That prosperity for so many is still just a dream.
Yeah, and what's really striking is how Skid Row became so intensely concentrated. It's become what the sources call a home to the marginalized, a sort of focal point for chronic homelessness, addiction, extreme poverty. And this concentration, while it wasn't entirely accidental, it seems, we found these really startling reports suggesting it's seen by some as dumping homeless area. Literally, other counties apparently transporting unhoused people and just releasing them in Skid Row.
Seriously. They just drop them off.
That's what the report suggests. The justification seems to be the already large population there. It's this perverse logic, right? Instead of solving it, you concentrate it.
Wow, that's shocking.
It really is. It speaks volumes about the system's failure or maybe unwillingness to tackle this comprehensively across different places. It just consolidates the despair. And this intense concentration, it fosters a unique environment too, including what's described as a perceived tolerance in Skid Row, especially around open drug use. Observers mention seeing people, even, get this, young couples in luxury cars, openly using drugs very close to a police station.
in luxury cars. That's bizarre.
It is. And for some people watching, it creates this really palpable feeling of lawlessness in the area. Like the usual rules just don't apply. It raises a big question, doesn't it? Is this tolerance a sign of despair, a consequence of neglect, or maybe some complex byproduct of a community just trying to survive under extreme pressure? It really shows how societal boundaries and, well, enforcement can shift or maybe fail in these kinds of unique concentrated zones.
That idea of lawlessness definitely stands out, especially that image. People who seem like they shouldn't be there, openly using drugs. It makes you wonder about the wider impact of concentrating a crisis like this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But moving on from that, let's talk about the immediate day-to-day experience. What's life actually like on the ground there? Our sources paint some really visceral pictures, scenes of intense immediate need, desperation, really. During food distributions, for instance, the scene is described as a feeding frenzy.
A feeding frenzy.
Yeah, observers called it almost animalistic. People literally diving at food as if they're starving, grabbing, scratching for anything they can get. It's just raw survival instinct on display. And then there's the mention of specific designated areas for getting rid of used needles. That's not just a minor detail, is it? It's this stark, constant reminder of the reality of addiction, the health crisis, the risk of disease when people are living so close together.
Absolutely. It underscores the huge public health challenges that are just woven into the social crisis. But while that gives us a snapshot of the struggle, it's really important to bring in the more nuanced views, perspectives from people who actually live there or have lived there. Our sources share this, well, unexpected viewpoint from someone who lived in Skid Row for years. They said, quote, "It's not all bad as you think."
Really? That's surprising.
It is, isn't it? It challenges our outside perceptions. And when they elaborated, they talked about a surprising sense of community. You get to know everybody, they said, and also this feeling of collective watchfulness. Nobody never goes to sleep. There's always somebody around. So it suggests this unique, maybe challenging, but real form of social connection there. And there's also this pragmatic give-and-take dynamic they mentioned. Because food is provided daily by different groups, they said you really never have to depend on yourself for that basic need. So it offers a slightly different angle, highlighting maybe moments of connection, an unconventional support system.
Okay. A different way of looking at it.
But then that perspective gets profoundly challenged by another person, someone formerly unhoused, who said this: "It's all here, bro. It's all perception."
All perception. What does that mean exactly?
Well, it suggests that beyond the physical stuff, the lack of shelter, food, safety, there's a really significant mental or psychological element to being homeless. It implies there's this internal landscape, that shapes how you experience and see your reality, maybe regardless of what's provided externally. It really makes you think maybe solving the physical problems isn't enough if you don't address that internal aspect too. Hints at deeper issues, mental state, maybe resilience. 2, unpacking the primary causes. A multifaceted crisis.
Okay, so we've started to see the stark reality on the ground. But that brings us right back to that fundamental and honestly deeply troubling question, especially given California's wealth. How did it get this bad? And maybe even more pressing.
Yeah.
What about all the money, the financial investment? Our research points to just a staggering amount. California has apparently spent billions of dollars since 2021 alone trying to fix homelessness.
Billions. With a B?
Exactly. Billions of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
And yet there's this critical question raised in the sources, and it's frankly stunning. Where did the money go? The worry expressed is that even the governor of California reportedly doesn't seem to know, which, just raises a massive red flag, doesn't it? About accountability, transparency, effectiveness.
Absolutely. That undeniable lack of clarity, of accountability for billions spent, it leads us straight into a really controversial but critical perspective on why the problem might be continuing. We found an interview with a longtime California business owner who gives a very blunt take. They claim the problem is actually made worse, even perpetuated by, quote, free money and free food and all the benefits.
Right, the enabling argument we sometimes hear.
Exactly. It's highly contentious, obviously. But the argument is that the very help intended to alleviate homelessness might in some ways contribute to it sticking around. By fostering dependency, perhaps, instead of promoting a path to self-sufficiency. The idea being, if basic needs are constantly met without enough clear pathways out, maybe the immediate pressure to find long-term solutions lessens. It could inadvertently keep people stuck. And this business owner, they take it even further. They make this really unsettling claim. They suggest that the nonprofits and even some for-profit groups getting large sums of taxpayer money to tackle homelessness might not actually want to fix the problem.
Wait, they don't want to fix it. Why on earth not?
Well, the provocative argument is that these organizations benefit financially from the problem continuing. They want, quote, to keep getting that money over and over.
Wow, that's a heavy accusation.
It is. It basically questions the core incentives within the whole system designed to help. It implies this kind of perverse financial loop where the ongoing crisis actually generates revenue, creating a powerful disincentive to genuinely end it. Now, beyond those challenging views, our sources definitely point to broader systemic failures as root causes. Things like unfair housing policies.
Okay, what does unfair housing policies actually mean in this context?
Well, it's a complex web. Think restrictive zoning laws that make it hard to build affordable housing. Think inadequate protections for tenants, making people vulnerable to eviction. Think rents just skyrocketing, far faster than wages are rising. For a lot of people, one missed paycheck, one medical bill can mean eviction, and then there are virtually no affordable places to go.
So it's a structural problem in the housing market itself.
Very much so. And add to that the glaring lack of a comprehensive, free healthcare system in the U.S. This is highlighted as a critical failure, especially when you see how many unhoused people are dealing with severe mental health issues or addiction. Without accessible, affordable care, how can they possibly stabilize their lives, address those underlying conditions? It's a huge gap. And when you connect that to the bigger economic picture, you see the impact of this strong individualistic capitalist system. Yes, it generates incredible wealth, innovation, but as the sources suggest, it also tends to isolate the vulnerable. It creates huge disparities and leaves many people behind without decent safety nets.
Right. The system itself creates winners and losers, essentially.
That's one interpretation, yes. And then there's that really provocative statement we found. The problem is solvable, but politically is not a good idea.
Solvable, but politically not a good idea. What does that even mean?
It suggests that maybe the persistence of homelessness isn't just about resources or know-how. It might be about political will, or maybe even underlying political dynamics that actually benefit from things staying as they are. It forces you to ask, doesn't it, who really gains from the current situation? And what would it take to actually shift political priorities towards real solutions?
That idea. Solvable, but politically not a good idea. That's tough to hear, isn't it? It suggests a choice, or at least a powerful inertia, not just an inability to solve it. Makes you think about the real costs, not just financial, but human, societal. But let's shift focus now from the systemic critiques to the individual stories. Because behind every number, there's a person, a unique story of struggle, maybe resilience too. And it's so important to stress, as our sources do very powerfully, that not all homeless are addicts. Every single person has their own path, often heartbreaking, that led them there. We learn about incredibly diverse backgrounds, There are former soldiers, people who served their country but then didn't get the support they needed afterwards, ended up on the streets, fighting battles nobody sees. We hear about ex-convicts, released from prison with literally nowhere to go. No family, no support, no job prospects, just out on the street. There are people evicted after losing a job or because of overwhelming debt, just victims of a precarious economy, really.
Falling through the cracks.
Exactly. And then profoundly mentally ill patients, sometimes abandoned by families, sometimes let down by institutions, left to navigate the streets without care, without medication. It's tragic. Others came seeking a new start, maybe chasing that California dream, only to get trapped. The harsh reality, the cost of living, just too much. But while these stories show the variety, our sources do also acknowledge that, yes, drug addiction is a major factor for a significant majority of the unhoused population, often tangled up with mental health issues, maybe made worse by neglect.
And this range of stories, it really brings up that question of personal agency versus these huge systemic barriers, doesn't it? We hear this powerful perspective from a formerly unhoused cook. He described his catalyst, the thing that made him change, as being sick and tired of being sick and tired.
A real turning point.
A profound internal shift, yeah. Born from desperation, self-awareness. And it led him to this 90-month program, which sounds intense. It wasn't just shelter. It was therapy, job training, structure. And it ultimately helped him get an apartment, rebuild his life. It shows that deep personal resolve can make a difference. But then you have to contrast that amazing breakthrough with the story of Catherine. She's been homeless for 15 months. And despite, as the source puts it, her workment, meaning her own efforts, plus help from caseworkers or organizations actively trying to get her into housing, she hasn't been able to qualify.
So even with effort and help, the system itself is a barrier.
It seems so in her case. It points directly to these massive systemic hurdles. It suggests that even with huge personal will, the path to stable housing can be incredibly tough, maybe impossible for some. Her story really highlights how individual effort, while vital, often isn't enough against a broken system. And something else our sources consistently noted. Many unhoused individuals are dealing with significant mental health challenges. And crucially, because of their conditions, they often can't sign themselves in for help.
Can't sign themselves in.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't consent to treatment.
Exactly. It's a complex legal and practical issue. If someone is experiencing severe psychosis or cognitive impairment, they might not be deemed capable of agreeing to help. So assistance programs become inaccessible to a whole group of people who desperately need them. It's this devastating catch-22 that traps people in illness and homelessness. And this brings us back to that really provocative statement from the formerly unhoused cook about mental health, the one that challenges how we usually think about homelessness. He said, "Do not look at the body. It's all here, bro. It's all perception."
Right, the perception point again.
Yes, and he elaborated, making this really challenging claim. He said, even if you give someone a shower, food, an apartment, a week later, they might pitch a tent right in the middle of it.
Seriously. A tent inside the apartment.
That's the picture he painted. And it wasn't meant as a judgment, more an observation, suggesting this deep internal mental barrier to staying housed, an inability maybe to process or adapt to conventional living. It implies that just providing the physical shelter isn't the whole answer if you don't address the underlying psychological stuff. And he backs this up with the raw reality. Most of the people that you put up in there can't end up paying their rent, and they come right back outside.
The revolving door.
Exactly. A vivid picture of temporary fixes failing to tackle the root causes, both external and internal. It leads to this relentless cycle. But what's really fascinating here, and connects to that internal landscape idea, is the insight from a nonprofit leader, they said. The heart. The cause of homelessness is loneliness, is that disconnection from community and family.
Loneliness. As the cause.
That's what they proposed. It shifts the focus quite dramatically, doesn't it? Suggesting that beyond economics, systems, even mental health, maybe this fundamental human need for belonging, for connection, when it's missing, lies at the very core of the crisis. It's a really powerful idea. And then, just to challenge everything again, we hear another individual perspective. You can't blame nobody but yourself.
Wow. Coming from someone experiencing homelessness.
Yes. And that statement, it forces us to think, doesn't it? How does individual responsibility fit in with all these systemic factors we've discussed? It raises a tough question for all of us. In a crisis this big, how do we balance individual accountability and societal responsibility? Is it one or the other? Or are both powerful forces needing different kinds of responses? 3, the role of policies and organizations. Solution or complication?
Okay, so we've really unpacked the complex causes, heard some deeply personal stories. Now let's zero in on the official responses. The government policies, the huge network of nonprofits. What role are they actually playing? Are they clear solutions? Or are they, like some sources hint, maybe tangled up in the problem itself, perhaps even making it worse? We heard this incredibly blunt assessment from someone who's been homeless, living in the exact same spot for 13 years.
13 years?
Yeah, and this person calls their own encampment the White House as a protest. And they state, flat out, the government is not doing their job properly. It's just this direct accusation, this cry of frustration from someone living it day in, day out. And it brings us right back to that jarring contrast we started with, doesn't it? America, richest nation, California, global economic giant. Yet the sources suggest government policies seem to be profoundly failing to deal with this human crisis. Where's the disconnect? Is it resources, political will, or just a fundamental misunderstanding of what's needed?
That naturally leads us to look closer at the specific policy failures mentioned. The sources really elaborate on the critique of unfair housing policies as a major, maybe primary driver. And that's not just a vague complaint. It points to specific things, like a chronic lack of investment in building genuinely affordable housing. There just aren't enough places for low-income folks. Plus, things like deregulation in the rental market leading to crazy price hikes and weak tenant protection laws that make it too easy to evict vulnerable people, they end up on the street with few options. And then again, the absence of that comprehensive free healthcare system in the U.S. It's flagged as this critical fundamental failure, especially as we've said, with so many unhoused people struggling with mental health and addiction. Without easy access to free care, how do they ever stabilize?
It's a vicious cycle, right? Illness makes homelessness worse. Homelessness makes illness worse.
Exactly, and there's no systemic way to break that cycle. The current patchwork system, ER visits, limited charity care, it just can't provide the sustained holistic support people need to recover and reintegrate. Now, here's where it gets really unsettling. There's an argument in the sources that the government might, implicitly or even explicitly, be profiting from the current system, or at least not incentivized to actually end homelessness.
Profiting from it. How?
Well, there's this bold statement that the government makes more money now off of putting people in these homes. Now, that likely refers to temporary shelters, maybe sanctioned tent cities, managed housing units, the infrastructure of crisis management rather than permanent, affordable housing solutions.
So managing the problem is more lucrative than solving it.
That's the potential perverse incentive being suggested. Managing it through costly, temporary fixes might be more financially viable for certain players, maybe government contractors, service providers, than investing in the big preventative measures that could actually end homelessness.
That's a pretty cynical view.
Yeah. It is cynical, but it raises serious questions about where the money goes and what the real policy goals are. And the tragic result of all these policy failures, it's summed up in this really sobering observation from the sources. Not a lot of hope here. A lot of people come to California and get trapped here and end up dying here.
That is brutal.
It paints this stark picture of a system that, for many, offers no way out. People arrive with dreams, get caught by systemic failures, and succumb to the harshness of street life, the lack of support. It's a devastating indictment, really, of a society allowing this amidst so much wealth.
Just devastating. To think people come looking for a dream and end up trapped, losing hope, losing their lives. But okay, government isn't the only actor here, right? The sources show this massive, almost overwhelming presence of nonprofit aid, especially in Skid Row. You see groups everywhere, day in, day out, giving out food, clothes, offering free overnight shelter. They're a constant visible force filling huge gaps. But that brings up another critical question posed right in our source material, and it's a tough one. Is the existence of these organizations a solution or part of the problem?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really forces you to think about the complex, sometimes contradictory impact of their work, as vital as it often is.
And to really get into this, our sources give us the Midnight Mission as a great case study. It provides real detail on their efforts and this whole debate around the nonprofit role. The range of services the Midnight Mission offers is just huge. It shows a really holistic approach. They have an education center, computers, Microsoft Office training, even music classes, trying to give people practical skills.
Okay, so job skills, education.
Right. Then there's crisis and bridge housing. That's emergency shelter, but it's also designed to connect people quickly to other services. They house about 300 people at a time, giving that critical first step off the street. And what seems really comprehensive is their approach to recovery and long-term stability. They have a full year-long drug and alcohol recovery program, really designed to tackle those obstacles to self-sufficiency head-on, plus a dedicated family program, even an apartment building just for homeless families, recognizing it hits everyone.
That's impressive scope.
It is. And the sheer scale of direct aid, they serve over 1 million meals a year just in Skid Row, open to anyone, man, woman, child, free, just meeting those basic daily needs. And they make a point to say their services aren't just for the visibly homeless, they also help the near homeless.
People with jobs and apartments, but still struggling.
Exactly. People who are working have a place, but the cost of food, especially in California, is just crushing them. It shows how close so many people are to the edge. Beyond that, they have volunteer-run things like a barbershop, Restoring Dignity, And they started the first women's shelter of its kind in Skid Row, meeting a critical need. It shows this deep commitment and understanding of the many facets of the crisis. Now, the Midnight Mission also tackles that enabling critique head-on, the argument that free services might keep people homeless.
Right. How do they respond to that?
Well, while some critics say providing basics enables people to stay unhoused, the Midnight Mission's argument is powerful. People need these basic things while they are homeless. Their view is you can't expect someone to focus on recovery or addiction help or job training if they're starving or have nowhere safe to sleep. You have to meet those fundamental survival needs first. You can't address the why if the what of daily survival is overwhelming. They also mention their funding. They take some government money, but they're not solely reliant on it. They focus on treating individuals and get support from private donors, other sources, gives them some independence maybe. And their focus on recovery seems key. They have beds specifically set aside for people having that moment of clarity.
A turning point where they choose sobriety.
Exactly, and they support those individuals immediately, showing they're ready to act when someone hits that window of opportunity. But, and here's a big but, connecting it back to the larger picture, even with all these dedicated, comprehensive efforts, the leader of this nonprofit states the sobering reality. Every day, more people are becoming homeless than are getting housed.
Wow. So they're fighting a losing battle,
Right.
essentially.
It points to a critical systemic failure that just overwhelms even the best efforts of individual groups. The core systems that should prevent and end homelessness, affordable housing, comprehensive mental health care, they aren't working at the scale needed. So it suggests that even the most dedicated nonprofits, while absolutely vital for immediate relief and providing pathways out for individuals, are just struggling against this massive tide of societal problems. Problems that go way beyond their reach or funding. The tap pouring people into homelessness is just flowing faster than the bucket of solutions can drain it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's just crystal clear, isn't it? The homelessness crisis, especially somewhere like Skid Row, it's this incredibly complex tapestry, woven from threads that often seem to contradict each other. We've looked at those profound economic gaps, the stark visual contrast between incredible wealth and just utter despair. We've grappled with the deep systemic failures, housing, healthcare, things that just keep people trapped in cycles of instability. And we've examined the really debated role of government policies and the equally complex, sometimes controversial work of nonprofits, asking, are they purely solutions or sometimes part of the problem? And maybe most importantly, we've touched on those deeply personal, often challenging individual stories, the mental health struggles, the grip of addiction, and that really profound sense of disconnection that seems to echo through it all. What really stands out again and again from all these layers, all these perspectives, is that there's no single simple cause, and definitely no easy, straightforward solution. It really mirrors what our sources said, doesn't it? That there's no final solution here. At least not one that fits neatly into a single policy or program. It demands a much more complex understanding and an even more complex approach.
Indeed. And if we connect that back, that recurring theme, almost haunting, is that the problem is seen as solvable but politically not a good idea. That's such a powerful, almost disturbing thought. It forces us as a society to look inward, doesn't it? It makes you wonder about the deeper political will, the societal determination needed for real transformative change. It suggests maybe the problem sticks around not because we can't solve it, but because we haven't collectively decided to. Maybe there are even powerful reasons within the system not to. It really forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our priorities, our incentives. And then there's that other statement, the really profound one from the nonprofit leader we talked about, the one that really sticks with you as we finish. The heart, the cause of homelessness is loneliness, is that disconnection from community and family.
That loneliness aspect.
Yeah, it just shifts the perspective so dramatically, suggesting that beyond the economics, the logistics, even the medical issues, maybe this fundamental human need for belonging, for connection when it's missing, is truly at the core of the crisis. It's a reminder, isn't it? Shelters provide beds, food provides meals, but real healing, real reintegration. Maybe that requires something much, much deeper. So this leaves us and you with a final provocative thought to chew on as you reflect on all this. Considering California's huge wealth, its global economic power, and the billions already spent trying to fix homelessness, if that core cause really is loneliness, that profound lack of connection, then what kind of innovative, truly transformative approaches could we imagine? Things beyond the traditional shelter and food model, approaches that might genuinely foster community, belonging. How could we, as a society, shift our focus to start rebuilding those fundamental human connections, addressing the mental, the social aspects of this crisis with the same urgency we apply to the physical symptoms? What would it really look like to invest not just in housing people, but in helping them belong again? Something to mull over, perhaps, as you think about that deep human need for connection in what often feels like an increasingly isolated world.